board sign in
on the resolution.
on the resolution.
So this is, again, HUD has approved, they've accepted that part 58, which was, we were waiting on their notification that they've accepted part 58. So board resolution that you all are aware, we're agreeing we're going to dispose of these 2 units, and then it's the next step on the checklist that I have to do once I say HUD either approved the disposition, and if you folks don't approve the disposition, then we're just done and we just sit on empty units and then have to make a decision on what we want to do to rehab them. But to refresh all of you, those are units that were hit in January of, I think, 2020. It was either 2020 or 2021. So a car went skidded down and through the intersection and into the living room. Yes. Yes. There was some tipsy driving involved.
It was a big truck and it went through the front of the house.
Through the front of the house. It landed in the living room.
Yeah.
So, and it is a duplex, like most of our other units. One unit was completely impacted. It is not livable, so we would have to completely rebuild. The problem with that is the back of that lot sits on that city-owned arroyo, and there's lots of erosion that happens. So that back lot, we have 2 fence posts that are just, they're not in ground anymore because of the level of erosion. So if we're not going to dispose of these units, not only are we going to rebuild the front wall, we're going to have to address the erosion on the back. And I did not go after official bids. I just wanted a ballpark figure for conversation purposes. I talked to 2 different contractors. Again, there's nothing on paper. It was not official. But for us to build a retaining wall on the back, on that arroyo side of that land, it was anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000 to build a retaining wall. We would then have to manage that retaining wall because the erosion is not going to stop. Simply putting in a retaining wall doesn't just stop the erosion. And so it's not just an initial investment of, hey, let's build a wall and everybody's gonna be happy. We would have to make sure that we managed it. And I'm not a supporter of that, quite honestly.
I think we've been trying to
Get rid of
dispose
it.
of these for quite some time, and this has just been a lengthy process.
Yes. So if you folks does anybody have any questions that I can answer? I was not here when this happened.
So do we need a motion to, or what do we need?
Discussion if we need discussion. And then if you guys are okay, then we need a motion to move ahead with the disposition process. Second, and then.
And then just, if we disposed of them, then they would go on the market, the land would go on the market, something like that?
Yes, we would sell, HUD would require that we sell for fair market, obviously. And my intent is when that sale happens, yes, it's for fair market, number 1. Number 2, the proceeds that we would earn would be held in escrow to launch us into other property to replace those units somewhere in town. Ideally on a flat and level surface that we do not have to deal with an erosion issue on the back end.
I'll make the motion to dispose of 1306 and 1308 Carbon.
I'll second.
Oh, and then I've got a question here, and we need to do it now or afterwards, but can you kind of give us a highlight of the disposition process and timeline that you're thinking that this might include?
So disposition process, once we notify HUD, then we already have our environmental impact study. Now it's really just sending them a lot of information and including the disposition that we approve it, and then it's we have to do fair market studies basically, and that's not just one real estate agent. They want several, they want a minimum of 3, and then there's full disclosures that we have to give that you do realize that this is not livable, you do realize that you have an erosion issue. Here's the environmental impact study report, which then we're required to roll forward to anybody that was legitimately either requested or is interested in purchasing it.
So you need 3 appraisals. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
Okay, and then plus the disclosures. What kind of time frame are we looking at to go through this?
HUD's expectation that once we say, yes, we've decided to go ahead, that it's 6 to 9 months. But when I talked with them, they said it's legitimately how fast is real estate selling in your county, because if you're a slower, sluggish county, they don't control that, well, neither do we. But they're expecting that 6 to 9 months.
Okay, and I know there's some deeds sitting in here, and I didn't look at those, or whether they were associated with this or not.
They are
But-
not.
But is it property in the housing's name, or is it in housing and HUD's name?
It's in the Trinidad Housing Authority's name.
It's in the housing
It's
authority?
in our, but
Okay.
because we're HUD funded,
But that's why I'm asking on the deed of trust. How is it? Who
It's
owns the property?
the Housing Authority.
Okay. That's-
Housing
that-
authority.
That answers my question.
Yeah.
I have another curiosity. Could we work with the Urban Renewal Authority to, on the sale or the redevelopment of the property?
I don't know it. I don't know, Keely.
Me either.
I don't know. That's a very good question, actually.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't be able to if we were gonna dispose of them. I mean, wouldn't that be another entity coming in and,
Well, I just know that a lot of other, housing authorities work with their, URAs, urban renewals, in situations like this. I just don't know exactly what the mechanics of that look like. But I doubt that if we made a decision to dispose of them today, I don't think that would hinder us from working with them
but
in
they
some way.
could theoretically be a entity that would purchase, right?
I think they could purchase, or I think they could help to the redevelopment effort or the sale on our behalf, almost like a agent.
And
So this is kind of, and this is kind of dragging us off the subject. But the title is in the housing thing, okay? The HUD then comes in, and I understand, you need to have, 3 appraisals. I don't have a problem with that. And the disclosures, then that's it, then whoever's the highest, then you put it out, and whoever's the highest.
whoever we sell it to, we notify HUD that as of this date, we had to close, we don't own it, here's who bought it, and there's money exchanged, and we put that money in a escrow account, and at that point, whatever they choose to do with it, we're out of it. If they wanna tear it down, if they wanna rebuild it, we would have zero control, zero input, zero concern with, well, I shouldn't say concern,
So
but
the disclosures, are they required by HUD, or are they just standard disclosures that anyone selling a piece of property would have to do? Because I'm hearing, first I heard you say that HUD required it, or is it just the usual and customary
it's the usual and
business?
customary that has to be part of the package to HUD to say, here's all the information. They don't have their own disclosures, it's the usual and customary that goes through a real estate exchange that they would have to have, as they can check the box that yes, we have it.
Okay, that, because HUD doesn't have specifics. They're just saying whatever your state requirements are, and local whatever, in terms of disclosures. Okay.
And Melissa, does HUD give us a time frame or time limit that money has to be put back into another housing unit?
Within 3 years. So
3 years.
we have 3 years to decide, which I do think that within 3 years, we would be deciding where do we want to redevelop. And at that point, it was a kind of a 30,000-foot question to HUD. Are you expecting at that point that how do we finance a redevelopment? And HUD's recommendation, now they don't control, but they did make a recommendation that we look at a multifamily apartment complex. My own feeling, there's pros and cons to an apartment complex versus the duplexes. But we do spend a significant amount of time as an agency driving from the north side of town to the south side of town to do something up in one unit, replace the faucet, for example, and then race to the south side of town to do the next work order. Where if we were not so scattered, it's a cost consideration, to have a multifamily unit versus another scattered site throughout town.
Okay, so now, and this is, again, off the subject a little bit. So hearing you say that that gives you 3 years to reinvest that money into something. So then it tells me then that HUD has control over the property. You know,
Well, I
more
thought it
so,
was-
more so than, you know, because it's titled in our name. And do we have do we have a HAP contract on this property?
No,
No?
no. we
And
do-
so,
no.
how do they come in and say that you have 3 years to reinvest the money, or what? Is it our money then?
I'm gonna tell you, I don't have a full answer for that, Dwayne. When I ask, what do we have to do and what's our time frame, because HUD is our funding source, and they said you have 3 years to reinvest, redevelop.
Or what?
And
Or what?
at that point, I didn't ask the or what, I was making notes. And it was in a conversation in another meeting, when we got off track of that meeting, and I can ask them, or what.
Yeah, I can see if we had a HAP contractor, you know, another contract on this unit, this property, you know, for everything. But then, you know, for them to, I'm just trying to understand the relationship and the authority, control they, or, you know, they have over us. You know, when this property is titled to us, we don't have it under contract with them. You know, I don't have a problem with encumbering the money and, you know, in a future development, but for you to come in and say that they're telling us that we only have 3 years, you know, what happens if it takes 4 years? Then do they say that after 3 years, that money that you gained off this is our money?
I'm gonna say probably not, because when they were hit, in a perfect world, we did not have 3 or 4 years to have sat on it. We were supposed to either redevelop, repair, or move into the disposition process well before now. But we haven't had for lack of a better term, a hit by HUD to say, you didn't do it, so here's what we're gonna do over here. So from that regard, I guess it probably wasn't, or what happens, if, but again, it was off topic from another agenda item we were supposed to be talking about. But I can get some information and I can roll it
Just,
forward.
I mean, like I said, it's more.
It's a good question, it's a very good question though, so,
And they've just been sitting empty, right?
yes, both of them have been sitting
And
empty.
so that has been impacting us because they've been like the offline or whatever, and we have to have, we wanna have so many units within our jurisdiction.
But if we don't have a HAP contract on it, then it's not counted as your. I don't know.
But that's how we dispose of them, so it gets off the inventory, right? I mean, that's
That's kind of what's leading into my whole question
Right,
in terms of that relationship and just to have a better understanding
Yeah.
of the overall, you know, and everything. And it's getting into the weeds a little bit, but anyway.
It's a valid question, it's a valid question, it's a good
I'm
question.
fine.
So I made the motion to dispose.
2 seconds.
All in favor? Keely? Jen? Charlie? Unanimous.
Okay.
This is just a second question, not anything. Did we receive an insurance payment for the damage that was done to that house, for those units?
I will guess yes. To say positively that we did, I haven't gone that far back to look specifically for that. I am guessing that yes, we received an insurance payment.
Okay, let's go down to 8C, discussion on an approval of changes and update of preference points for the applicants currently on the waiting list, which requires to obtain points as administrated and reflected on the ACOP policy.
So this is, our current, you see the current and proposed. And in preparation for today's meeting, I talked with some of the area, public housing authorities from Pueblo to us and from Aguilar, Alamosa, sorry, Alamosa out to Lamar and La Junta. We by far, as an agency, have the most robust preference list of any of the housing agencies that I talk to. Two of them, where you move up on the wait list is directly when we date and time stamped your received and completed application. That's it. They don't use any kind of preference points. So that was 2 of the 6 that I talked to. 1 I never heard back from, and 2 of the others, they use 3 preference points. They use elderly and disabled, residency, and work preference. They don't give any kind of preference points to veterans. They give no preference points to victims of domestic violence who are trying to leave a terrible situation. So it is up to us to decide what preference points and our value. And the only preference point, our software requires that if we don't have any other kind of preference point, they would get 1 when we log into the system their completed application, which we do now. But again, 2 other housing agencies are like, we're not dealing with preference points. We put it in our ACOP. You move up the list based on when we get your completed date and time stamped completed application. Administratively, that is much easier than assigning pref points for anything else.
And so why did we choose to go this direction?
I don't have the history, Dwayne, I don't know.
And then my other question was the lowering the points for, the domestic violence.
That is the population. One of our performance indicators is completion of application moving into tenancy. Domestic violence victims, for the most part, need immediate and emergent housing. We don't offer that. We don't have that capability. This is one of our performance indicators that this is a population that we don't have a high success rate in placing, because they need housing faster than we can grant their need. The secondary part of that is they may not have the backup documentation that we require by legislation to become an applicant. And even if we had agencies much like ADA that helps those folks get that documentation, it doesn't mean that they get it or that they get it fast enough. And we can't move them onto the wait list until we get that information. So if we have an application that we can't process, it sits out there. And they're given a letter, we still need this information. And if they don't communicate, but we give it by letter, so if they don't get their mail at the address that they've given us, we have no other way to reach these people. So this is a performance indicator issue for us.
Can
And
I respond to that?
yeah, absolutely.
Right now, HUD is pulling in millions of dollars to house survivors of domestic violence. So I'm not sure this is the time we want to pull units. I realize that we're not emergent, but we have an emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence.
Right.
And due to the complexities of domestic violence, yes, they may not have all of their paperwork with them, but we do provide that assistance to them.
Yes, and you and I have talked about that, and you had shared that also in other meetings, that yes, you guys are, my words only, bending over backwards to help them. It's a limitation for us as an agency, and I wish I could provide the support that they need a lot quicker. We're not set up for that.
I'm just not sure I understand how preference points work. Can you just give us a little synopsis of that?
Sure. So I apply, I'm gonna use myself. I apply and I don't have any preference point at all. I'm not from here, I'm not a veteran, I'm not elderly, I'm not disabled, I'm not a victim of DV. I give my completed application with all my backup documentation. I get logged into the system. I'm gonna use you. you come in, you're a veteran, you're working, you're from here, you automatically get those preference points, so you jump up on the wait list much faster than I do because you have preference points versus me. So you may come in days, weeks, or a couple months later, but you have preference points, so automatically you give us your application, all your backup data, you automatically jump higher and faster on the wait list than I do because I don't have those preference points. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So why does that hurt us then?
One of our performance indicators is from point of we have everything, we have all your backup documentation, because we're tracked initially also, we are tracked and we have to report when I give an application, I don't, but front desk gives an application. When that application comes back, that's also tracked from here we gave it, we got it back, is it complete or is it not? And if it is, great, we process it, you make your way onto the wait list. If it's not complete, we're missing a signature, we're missing any of the backup documentation that is asked for, we send a letter. We're missing this information, please provide it within this time frame. When we have to report that we have this many applications given, we have this many that came back, we have this many that were complete and moving forward, and we have this many that are not complete and not moving forward, we have to provide that statistical data, and that we can't move them forward because we don't have everything. By and large, that population is a DV population.
But you're not saving a unit for, say, a DV survivor to fill out that information.
No, we're not.
Okay.
But it's the application, it's that time frame and that number of we gave, we got, we move forward, we gave, we got, we can't move forward. And that is those are some of the performance indicators that HUD looks at on our overall health as an organization. So no, we're not holding units at all. We can't hold units for anybody. And we have a wait list. So we have people,
Right.
and that wait list is, they're ready to be housed as soon as we have a unit that is available and appropriate for them. So,
And what is HUD's opinion on preference points? Do they encourage it?
they do not discourage, they do not encourage. They said it is an agency-specific choice. So there's no encouragement, there's no discouragement. That's where they leave it.
So each agency is different, they can have preference points, we don't have to, or the others do, or.
Correct. But if you do have preference points, we have to publish this in our admissions and occupancy policy. We have to share that with HUD, and of course we have to follow it. But HUD does not encourage or discourage whether we do or we don't. It is our choice. But if we choose to have them,
We gotta stick by the guidelines and rules.
correct. Yes.
So do we have an influx of veterans? Because I see that we're looking up that one.
Yes. And work preference, I am making a recommendation that if they are working, that we give them credit for working. Because the more that they work, the less that we have to supplement, because they're supplementing their own life by working.
So you need a motion on this?
Please.
So moved.
You want
Accept.
you want to go with the preference points on this? right?
Yeah.
I need a second.
We adopt this.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, are we adopting the current or the?
Proposed.
Proposed, okay.
All in favor? Keely?
Aye.
Yes.
Shirley?
No.
Okay, passed.
Okay.
We're down to D.
So,
Or, yeah,
yes, so ACOP must be updated. Our last ACOP occurred back in 2018, so it's out of date and out of compliance. This had to be part, our preference points is part of our ACOP. So this is not a motion that the board has to approve because you do not have an ACOP to look at and review. This I will roll into the ACOP. You should have a updated to review within 30 to 45 days. That is how far behind Nelrod, who is the agency that does our ACOP, is behind, and I will notify them tomorrow that this is one of those changes that we have to implement.
okay. E, land issue at 300 block of High Street. Sewer cleanup where 315 High Street was on surveyed land on the northwest corner of the vacant land, adjacent to the fence line that next to the fourplex, with the address of 301, 303, 305, and 307 High Street. Cleanup has been relocated by the owner of 315 High Street at their expense. We already discussed this, didn't we?
We already discussed this, but we did not agree to allow 315 High to continue to care. There is a significant strip of land that is vacant between that 303, 307, 301, 3, 5, and 7, and their lot, they have taken care of moving their sewer. But they have taken care of approximately 25 feet by 50 feet of housing-owned land. There was a gentleman's agreement in place with Helen Beltry. Owners are now asking for continuance of this agreement. If a formal written agreement is required by the board, they're comfortable with a gentleman's agreement. But I would prefer to have something in writing that gives clarification on what they're doing and what we're doing. And are we going to pay them? We have not paid them anything. They have simply taken care of it. We have not, but it is technically our own land. I would prefer that there be even a gentleman's agreement, be a written agreement on what they're going to continue to do, and make it very plain that there is no money exchange. We're not paying them. If they choose not to do that, then we need to be responsible and take care of it, which we have not done. We let them take care of it because it's outside of our fence line. So we do not have a fence covering this strip of 25 by 50 feet.
Were these the folks that came to visit?
And but then it says that we don't have all the.
That was
not
it.
all the documents have been received yet.
That I should have.
So these are all.
These
the
are all of the
documents,
documents.
the deeds and whatever else.
Yes. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just so, at this point, we have everything, we know that it's our property. They moved the sewer line.
Correct.
We don't have a necessity for the property.
Not now or not yet.
Right.
But they are looking at moving to Houston, and because we already have that fourplex that is right there.
Right, so is there any, but, I mean, really the only thing that we would get hit for at this juncture, if they stopped caring for that, would be potentially like a weed violation or something, correct?
Correct. Now because they had a lot of traffic, our fence line, and then they did not put up any fence for a long, long time. Then there was lots and lots of traffic traveling through there. They put up a fence along the front edge of their property and basically extended the fence through this that's ours, and they freely admit that it's ours, to our current fence to stop that traffic going back and forth. So if they refuse to continue to take care of it, or we say, no, we're gonna take back possession and care for it, I would say we need to ask them to take down the fence that covers our strip in there, and then we will just make sure that we maintain it so that we don't get weed violations or whatever. But I also think that if we have no fence, we're gonna have that same kind of traffic issue that's
Right.
gonna resume through there.
But they're also the people that are thinking about leaving.
Correct.
So then, really, I mean, I'm just saying this out loud, do we really have to do anything about it yet, or can we just wait until they?
No, but they're looking at relocating by the end of this year, this calendar year, because her husband's already in Houston working. And so they're looking at selling.
Right.
I'm interested as a housing authority because we already have complexes, units in the area,
Right,
completely adjacent and then directly across the street.
right.
So if we were to sell or dispose of Carbon, my preference is to immediately
By that.
buy that. They have they have technically 3 lots in there that is theirs. We would have to tear down their house, but we would redevelop it, and that 301, 303, 5 and 7 High is one of our original buildings. It is old, we cannot retrofit it any more than we already have.
And you got Cortisone Square just right down.
Just right,
Yeah.
like right down at the bottom.
Yeah,
So I would like to potentially buy that, tear down, redevelop, and then tear down 301 through 307 High. Everybody that's in that complex would immediately, of course, have first dibs at a new complex. And then some of our other just work up the list, the oldest, most out of date, that haven't been updated. Look at
so,
it.
so again, like, really, we don't
We don't have to
we don't have to
technically.
do anything right now.
She's asking for a continued gentleman's agreement, is what she would like. And this whole,
When she contacted me, because I was gonna bring up this, you know, and it was more of that we wouldn't take down the fence. You know, and she knows that we're interested in, you know, buying the property, but she didn't, because she sought me out the other day, run into her in one of the stores, and she just asked me if I would ask, you know, so, I mean, I took from her issue was that we not remove the fence.
And her
And-
fence helps us though.
Right.
it does.
And-
I would
but-
prefer to
and so-
leave it
So
alone.
I don't know where she got the idea that the housing authority was looking at potentially taking the fence down. And I called her right before I walked in the door here just to make sure that I understood what she,
That has
mentioned
never been the
last week.
conversation that I've had with her.
Okay, I was just curious because that's what she hit me up with.
So the neighbor that is on 3rd Street, that faces 3rd Street, this whole thing started when both of these ladies came in independently, the 3rd Street, so Susan Vasquez came in and she demanded that I give her a letter authorizing her to have access to our lot that borders hers. And I said, I'm not going to do that. Like, why are you asking? She said, well, I've been to the county clerk's office, I've been taking care of it, it's not clear. And I said, I will tell you that there would have been a survey. I'm not gonna sign something without doing my own research. Not 15 minutes after she left, here came the 315 High folks, couple, and their sewer cleanout was on our land. 3rd Street had to that point said, it's on my land and you're not accessing it. It's mine and you can't access it. 315 High at that point had not had a working sewer in more than 3 weeks. I have lived without a sewer at home. When we bought our house, past inspections, everything else, 6 weeks later, our sewer from the house to the alley failed. It took us about 2 months because we closed Memorial Weekend. 4th of July weekend is when it failed, and contractors were completely booked until after Labor Day. So to begin with, it wasn't 3rd Street's land to prevent somebody from accessing even the corner of her land, and that clean out was not on hers, it was on ours. And so I went down there and I found stakes, and by that time 315 had also had Mr. Terry, the surveyor who had originally surveyed. He located all of the east-west markers, the two pegs, and this clean out was definitely on our side of the peg. So, Third Street was also here, she's put in all kinds of money, it wasn't hers to improve. And I do believe at some point she kinda knew that, especially when she came in and she wanted me to sign an authorization letter that that was hers. It's not that easy, it's not that simple, and it's not that clean. But they, 315 High has completely relocated their sewer cleanout. It is not on our land in any fashion. It is completely on their land. It is out in the middle of their driveway.
So again, we don't have cause to do anything at this moment. It was all brought up by the sewer cleanout and then a neighbor dispute whether or not it was friendly or not, whatever. There was some dispute on access to the cleanout.
Yes.
So we don't have to really do anything.
And again, I'm okay with, as long as you all are aware, continuing the gentleman's agreement. And 315 High does want the fence left up. It helps us as well. It completely,
Somehow she got or she was concerned that we were gonna take the fence down. And I said, I'm not aware of it, but I will ask. And so
no,
I will let her know that we have no intentions of removing the fence.
we do
And
not.
that we're, you know,
It benefits us.
okay.
It benefits us, is my opinion.
So we need to make a contract that she could, a written contract, not a written legal.
I guess if to solve this problem for the us involved in the two other homeowners, I mean, if you want to draft something and present it, then we can take a look at it, but at this point, I mean, to come up with something, it just doesn't make sense at this juncture, in my view, if our goal is to purchase that other property.
Well, and that is, I think that that's in our best interest. And if you guys are all comfortable, I'm completely comfortable calling 315 and saying, gentleman's agreement continues, we're good, we're not gonna pull down the fence. We know where stakes are, they're well marked, they've taken care of the sewer clean out issue, so if we're going to do some kind of a legal agreement, I will type something up, I will run it through John to make sure that the legalese is as it should be, and I would share it. I'm comfortable that I think we should be interested enough that I'm saying, let's just leave it alone.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Okay,
Let her
Leave it
know
as
that we're
is.
taking the
leave it
fence
as is, and I can call Connie and,
Yeah, and just say, look, we're not gonna do anything right now, our intent, if you decide to leave, is to attempt to purchase that, and I would just
leave it, okay. I will follow up with her either tomorrow or Friday and just say, the board has discussed it, we're happy leaving things
We're just leaving it
as it is. And are you comfortable with that? I think she will be.
And the other thing is to give us the first chance to purchase that property from her.
Correct.
If and when we get rid of it.
decide. And they are, again, in talking with her, it was informal, it was conversation.
Yeah,
Her husband is already in Houston and she's hoping to be down there as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, Houston is a pretty decent trek home, or for her to go down there to spend time with her husband,
yeah, no,
so.
so yeah, I'd say just leave it as is with the deal that we get first chance to purchase that manpower so we can add on or build
Right.
on.
So the next following pages are property records, their deeds, they're all of those things. So you have them, but again, she is looking to relocate, and you all know that I am pretty interested. Now, the comparable market analysis is no longer, no real estate agent would consider it completely accurate because it is more than 12 months old. So they would have to have, when they get ready to actively list or engage us, they would have to have another comp analysis done because the outdated of more than a year ago. And at this point, I mean, she hasn't said, hey, we're moving and are you guys, let's move forward with discussion and negotiation. She has not approached me with that. So I don't, for item F, I legitimately don't think that there's a whole lot to move forward because she hasn't said, here's our time frame. But I just want you guys to be fully aware
And
that.
they have all these documents too.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yes, yep. So item G, you don't have to read all of this unless you want to, Ruben. These are all of the HUD, these are all of the requested units that we have sent confirmation of positive asbestos to. So 1212 San Luis, this most recent tenant had been in that unit for more than 30 years. Tenant had not been modernized. It was in terrible shape. It's going to be an absolute full remodel. This one has now tested positive for asbestos. 205 East Goddard, this was a drug unit that has been cleaned up. The hoard unit has been taken out. It has tested for asbestos. 422 West 3rd, tested positive for asbestos. 504 East 1st, tested positive for asbestos. 915 Baltimore was a nicotine infested unit. That has now been cleaned and mitigated. It has also tested positive for asbestos. 1216 East 7th was left absolutely vile. Maintenance staff took 5 dump trailer loads of personal belongings that were left behind to the landfill. It tested positive for nicotine. It has also now tested positive for asbestos. 812 Smith was another nicotine infested unit. 812 Smith has been cleaned from the nicotine, but it tested positive for asbestos. 1211 Linden, moved with no notice to us, tested positive for nicotine, and also has tested positive for asbestos. So all of these units, the request has gone in along with the positive report showing asbestos existence, and we are waiting on HUD to approve our request to take them offline so that we can start with the abatement. And then of course it's gonna be a full remodel because they will gut to the studs.
Has anyone been displaced due to any of this?
No, these are all units that as they've moved out, so we have not displaced anybody, it's move outs.
So the person in 1212 San Luis, after 30 years, they just left?
We moved him into a different unit because that unit was in serious enough disrepair that we had to relocate so that we could fix initially floor, kitchen cupboards, those types of things, because they were original to before he had moved in.
So it wasn't through no fault of his own?
No, it was not. So we relocated him at our cost, got him settled, and then got ready to remodel, and through the testing, I've learned that we now have asbestos. So we've not displaced anybody.
So what's the duration these will be offline?
The first ones that we do likely will be 4 to 5 months. And because we just said, here's one great big list, of course, the ones that are later on the process are going to be offline longer.
Fine.
So they could be offline as long as a year. And we have put out for bid for asbestos abatement. We have also put out for bid for the electrical, because we will of course have to bring up to code. We have put out for bid for plumbers and put out for bid for basically the construction remodel, excluding those skilled trades.
So are we doing this in-house?
No, we are not. We're not licensed or for the asbestos abatement,
Well, I knew that.
certainly.
No,
We are also not licensed electricians or licensed plumbers. So those, and then the actual replacing, once those core infrastructure items have been replaced and brought up to code, we do not have the staff to pull staff to then say, okay, all of that's done, now you go finish the remodel. We're contracting that out.
because I was going to ask you if we had enough, excuse me, employees to.
No, we do not.
Okay.
No. So item H, at this point, we will have internal just for staff training. It will not include board at this point, or HUD, but we will have internal staff training on agency goals, training needs, program requirements, because we have staff that have been here for years, yes, but we have new staff coming in. And so that training is scheduled for December 18th and December 19th, and it is staff only at that point.
Is that an all-day training?
It's an all-day, yes.
2 days.
It's a 2-day training, so it's communication, team building, agency goals, program requirements, going over new HUD. Here's what they're expecting on the new inspection, because they've changed from being concentrated from the street view or the outside view to much more the internal infrastructure of units. So it's training for staff needed. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that anymore.
The e-waste recycling? No place does that.
So are we bringing in outside people for the training, or are we doing the training in-house?
It is a mix, it's a blend of. The external trainer is Randy Anderson. He runs E3 training from Texas. I have taken several of his facilitated trainings. I have contacted 2 other trainers. Randy is a third the cost of including travel to come up from Lubbock area versus 2 people here in Colorado. Literally, and I've taken training from both of these other people as well. One of them is $15,000 a day, which is crazy to me. Even with Randy's travel, he's $5,000 a day. And the other one comes from, this $15,000 a day is in Denver, so you literally drive down I-25 for, 3.5 or 4 hours? But her minimum is $15,000 a day. And then the other one was from far western slope, and she's booked out far enough that I'm like, we're not gonna go out for 8 months, so dumped her.
Okay, so we're getting this stuff after the fact. You've already contracted with these people?
I have not
Okay.
signed anything or
Okay.
contracted. That is what he said his cost is, so no, I've not signed anything.
Yeah, because, and I don't want to back up, because, I mean, it's like we spent a lot of time on section G, and, but you've already put everything out to bid, and everything. And I don't know if I'm missing part of it or what,
Once we learned that we had asbestos
Right,
in
I understand
units,
that you gotta do that, but.
I called HUD and I said, okay, here's what we've learned. And they're like, okay, here's your process. So I went ahead and I can't house somebody with an asbestos unit, so that's why I processed what I did.
All right, maybe it's the way it's presented, that I'm not in sync with. So, all right.
So I have a question on the training. I know that staff did attend 2 trainings, one NELROD.
Both of them
In
were
April?
NELROD. They were both NELROD trainings, Charlene. So April, some staff went, but not all, because we couldn't close down. And then the NELROD training in August was for staff different staff, or staff who had roles that had significantly changed. And then Keely also, as a board member, did go to the August training. She did not go, no board went to the April training, but Keely did go to the August training. And both of them were NELROD training specifically.
So the training that they're having now is going to be different than this?
Yes.
And so on the training, what's our budget for it? Because you threw out 15,000, you threw out 5,000, you threw out, so what is our budget for it?
So we do not have a line item budget that says training is this. It's a,
Right, but for this
this-
particular, what are we looking at?
for the 2 days with Randy, including training or travel, hotel, all of that, 10 to 11,000. And that is a reimbursable
Okay,
by HUD.
okay.
So that's not money that we're just simply out in a sense. So it's recoverable for us.
And do you have a ballpark of what both of the LRAD trainings were?
Not off the top of my head, Charlene. Not off the top of my head. With travel and per diem, the one in April, this is a very soft estimate. I would say probably 6,000 to 7,000 with airfare, hotel, per diem and the majority of staff went. It was also a longer training. And the Cleveland training was a very fast 2 days, so it was probably, again, soft estimate, knowing who went, 4 to 5.
Then all this is reimbursed.
It's reimbursable back to HUD.
Yeah, okay.
Not to us,
Huh?
not to us.
No.
Budgeted, right?
The NELROD training, that was budgeted.
Okay.
This additional
Training.
training is reimbursable. It's not budgeted, but it's needed.
Okay.
It's necessary.
So you're saying this one's geared towards like, leadership and team building and stuff like
Communication
that?
styles, trust building, it's agency employee. Health in a sense, it's not the hard, here's a new legislation, here's how you have to manage
You
it.
can't just do like all paper, so you have to have some of the team building and the other communication stuff.
Yes.
I like that.
I like that it's during the holidays, because then you can also, it's just a nice time to do team building, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, number 10, proposed resolutions and action.
We need to go back up to number 9,
Oh,
please.
okay, sorry. Discussion, chargeback cost of tenants, the existing price sheets, oh, okay, has been updated since
2009.
2009, why was I thinking 19?
I don't know.
And no longer accurate. Okay, so you're saying we're still working on the budget on some of the items, purchase items that from 2009?
It's not budget as in our budget.
No.
It's what we can charge back to a tenant that damages something. So if their stove quits working because it's old, they're not charged back. If they damage their stove because they're angry or whatever, then they are charged back. And what we are currently charging is governed by you folks as a board. It's approved. We have not updated our prices on what we charge back to tenants in damage situations
Okay.
since April of 2009 on the public housing side. Corazon Square side was the year prior. So Corazon Square prices do not match public housing, and they need to. Because, for example, if we have to go buy a door, Corazon Square doesn't get charged one price, and public housing get charged a different price when we go to builders. The door is the door is the door, and it's the price. And so Corazon, my recommendation is that as we update this, and my intent was to say, here's proposed based on actually what we have to pay in today's money. And it is multiple pages long, and it is hours and hours of research going back through legitimately invoices on what we've purchased. So I do not have a proposed amount to give you and say, here's what today's costs are. But for example, an electric range was $311, and that's if they take a hammer, for example, and beat their stove up. Because this is approved and it's published, we could only charge them $311. We cannot replace a stove.
I wanna buy a fridge for $400, that'd be nice.
Wouldn't that be fabulous?
Fabulous.
Nice
You
stove
go buy
for
two,
$3.
right?
I don't need a stove, I'd like a new fridge.
Well, we have used ones available for $50.
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay,
Do
so we,
tenants pay a deposit?
they pay a damage deposit on their unit, but it is only replaced or reimbursed or not when they move out. But if they damage something in the meantime, we don't hit their deposit, we're not allowed to. We have to hold that in escrow till they move out. But yes, they are paying a damage deposit when they move in. So, at this point, I don't have proposed, costs. It was a much deeper, longer process than when I put this agenda together last week. So just know that as we update, it will be provided and we will have to make, a decision. But we have a tenant, that inside of the last 60 days, I am not a psychiatrist and I am not an MD. I do think that this tenant is likely mentally ill. She has damaged to the point that they are not repairable. They are now going to be replaced, 3 doors in her unit. And those doors, one of them is a 4-foot closet door because they're sliding doors on her bedroom closet. She has ripped apart one of those 4-foot sliding doors, and she says it was a fit, but part of ripping that off also ripped all, of course, the track on the top and the bottom. She also damaged the framework when she ripped her door apart and off. So it's not just we go buy a new door, we slap some paint on it and we go put it back. It's, yes, we have to do that to the door, we also have to replace the track, and we also have to take everything off.
This just needs to be updated since it was from 2009.
2009. Yes, legitimately it has to
But
be.
we're still using this right now.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is, but legitimately, this is putting us in the hole in a sense, because we're not covering our costs when something is damaged. So know that by next board meeting, you will have you saw what we were paying actually, here's what the proposed is, because these are legitimate, tied to what we are.
We're not making money on anything over the proposed either.
No, we're not, this is not a money-making proposition, it's
It's just to break even.
it is to break even.
How successful are you in getting these costs reimbursed by the tenant?
Some relatively successful, others not at all.
So what's the consequence?
If they stay in the unit and they do not pay, they will get lease violations leading to lease terminations. And if we have to move to eviction through that, these costs are calculated into that eviction cost hearing. Is turned over to HUD, is turned over to collection agency. If we have to go that route, I don't think we're gonna get much. But we do have tenants that legitimately, they damage it, we put them on a payment agreement plan, and for the most part, if we are willing to work with them, which we are, you damage it, you admit it, we'll work with you. And it may take them a year to get it paid off, but we have multiple tenants right now that are on repayment agreements for damage to their unit.
So using your terms a little bit ago, you said some good, some not so good. So for every $1,000 worth of damages, what percentage of that 1,000 do you think we recover? 40%, 30%?
Of current tenants, though we're not moving to eviction, I would say we're probably up around 70%. If we're moving to eviction, 10, 15, maybe.
70 is good. I mean, better than 10.
Far better, yes.
For the list, I know you said that you were doing some like historical and market research, but I don't know, I haven't looked at RS means in a while.
Okay.
Have you ever used that?
No.
It breaks, it's a contractor thing, and it may have a subscription that might be like, if you only wanna use it, it's to cost out components. And so I'm thinking they might have like a subscription or something like that you could utilize for like 1 month, and then you just search all the components.
Thank you for that. And it's called RS Means.
RS means.
MEANS.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that,
That's an
Keely.
index. Yeah.
And then we're ready for
for all this. Okay, number 10, proposed resolutions and action. The following action items are slated for the review and approval. Number 1077, resolution of disposal of 1306 and 1308 carbon. That's all good.
We talked about,
Is that
yes,
to dispose of?
correct.
Okay.
But this is the resolution to say to HUD, we're in agreement, we're moving forward with disposal. So we need a motion second, and
I thought we already made this motion.
Yeah, but we gotta redo the thing forward. So
because
we
this
can
is
send
the
it to HUD.
resolution.
Oh, I see. So I'll make the motion for the resolution to dispose of the units.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Charlene? Dwayne?
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor.
Okay, good.
Okay, commissioners' comments. Ely?
Nothing I can think of.
Ms. Jennifer?
I don't have anything.
Dwayne?
I would, we're gonna, under addition and deletions to the agenda, which we skipped over, Lieutenant, and then, when Melissa was giving a report on the video recording, I wanted to bring up the subject of video recording. I think it was 3 months ago we came in here and, you know, we weren't told in advance that we're gonna be recording and everything, and so then we asked why. And if my memory serves me correct, I was told for 3 reasons. 1, HUD required it. 2, Open Records Act, you know, and then 3, if somebody from HUD wanted to attend, they'd be able to attend. And mentioned at that time that, you know, Zoom does, you know, pretty much everything there. And so then I started looking at things, and I asked, and in, I think it was last month, you know, in the packet, there was things on Colorado Open Records, you know, law. And then I asked Melissa to point out in there, you know, where I could find requirements for video recording. And it's not in there, okay? Then I asked for documentation from HUD that is requiring video recording. And I'm not aware of any documents, and I asked for that, and I haven't received it. So I'm questioning whether or not we really need to have the meetings recorded. Okay?
Yes, so I went back to HUD. They roll up because they are a division of the federal government. Federal government has requirements because we are a public entity. It's not HUD proper, it is federal government that requires that we be recorded and we be open. So also, then there's the Sunshine Law in Colorado that also requires, and it is open records, that if somebody wants to make a request, we have to be able to provide that. So it's not HUD proper, but they said there is federal legislation that requires, and they're a federal unit,
Okay.
so that's where it is.
Okay, so then I went a step further. I know several lawyers, attorneys. And so I asked one, and one of them is associated with Housing Authority, and not locally here. But they're saying, no, you don't need to record them. No, the Open Records Act does not cover that, I mean, doesn't require it. The Sunshine Law doesn't require it. And so I'm going, it's not really required. Now, minutes and everything of the proceedings and everything, yes, okay? But, you know, we don't have a policy on recording. You know, it was an administrative, you know, decision. It was not a board decision. And as a board member, I'm not in favor of the video recordings. And that's where I'm at with it.
So, in addition, there is a new state statute, and I can get that,
Okay?
that requires that we do record. That is not federal, that is in Colorado, and it took effect in 2024.
Okay.
And I can get you that.
Okay. Get us all that information,
Yeah,
please.
Okay.
if you would. And then, if we are going to continue with it, I would like to have a policy, you know, that basically states, you know, what we do with recordings, how long they're kept, who keeps them, the record of access, for them being accessed and everything, and whatever else that, a policy should include, on that. And, so.
Okay, the other thing you could do is ask our attorney on the stuff that Wayne asked, get the legal.
The legal,
Aspects of everything.
okay,
And even some, and I'll even say that, having conversations with other directors of housing authorities in small areas in Colorado, they're telling me this doesn't exist when asked. And so that's, I'm just going.
some do, some don't, but yeah,
Well,
you're
no,
right.
No, on the rules and regulations covering this, that they're not aware of these rules and regulations. And I'm aware, I know that rules change, on an ongoing basis, and everything, so I'm just asking, for the information, to update my knowledge base,
Okay,
on this.
Yeah, that's why I just have Melissa talk to our attorney to get all the ins and outs legally of what can and can't happen.
Requirements for.
Yeah.
Requirements for, and who is requiring it.
Yeah.
I receive federal funding, I'm sure you receive federal funding. It's not anything that I'm required to do.
no, because you guys are private entities, you guys are nonprofits, you're not a public, yes, you receive public money, yes, but you're not a public agency, like we are. So there's different rules that apply to nonprofits versus a public entity.
I've also had I've received federal funding before where I was part of a nonprofit or private entity, and sometimes the requirements for receiving the funding will include certain administrative practices. So sometimes it'll include something like reporting, and sometimes it won't.
Yeah, I've been in this, this was reading for long than anybody here probably. And I've never seen this on, and I did reach out to a couple housing places. And I did talk to a couple attorneys, and everything.
I will get it to you.
So I'd just like to see it. And then if that's a requirement, then I'm fine with it. But if not, then I think we need to take a look whether or not that is what we want to do. We have the minutes to the meeting, and then if we are going to do it, I'd like to see policy that is very, that outlines,
And any policy, I will absolutely have John, our attorney, review it, make sure that legally we're covered, do we meet the requirements, and here's how it goes. And John would be absolutely involved in that process.
Don't we need to update, I mean, not to interrupt what you're saying during your comments, but don't we need to update our policies anyway?
All of
I
them,
think I
Jen.
received like a copy of them whenever I first got on the board, and I'm pretty sure they were like Xerox copy from like 1998. So if we've got this attorney who's working with housing authorities, maybe he just do the policy, I mean, or
No, Rod, or somebody like that.
somebody does it, yeah. Cause it seems like all the policy probably needs to,
All of them need to be updated. Our personnel policies have not been updated since 1984. So legitimately, the world that we lived in 1984 is not the world that we live in today, nor do we work in. That is just one example, but our ACOP that hasn't been updated since 2018, yes, we're working on that. Every policy in here is,
that should probably be a
Totally updated.
priority then, that we really look at, especially from, I mean, that's the year I was born. I mean, that was a great year, but that doesn't mean we should be operating on policies from 1984.
correct, agreed. But that's also, and updating our personnel policy is in process, but it's not something that I can say, okay, here y'all go. I mean, there's,
Yeah, it takes a lot.
it
but
takes a
it's-
lot.
But I think I mean, these kinds of things should be added.
Added.
As necessary, and so we don't have to, rely on outdated stuff.
And I will contact Nelrod and see if they have, do they have boilerplate template that we can just put our own stuff in? Because they may, I haven't asked that question, but I'm happy to do that. We're also a member of NARO, which is another public housing nationwide, so I can reach out to both of them and say, hey, do you guys have just boilerplate, if nothing else,
Would that be
boilerplate.
something that this board would have to adopt, would be all the policies for personnel and, any other stuff?
Yes, yes.
We're redoing
It's
all
gonna
of our
take time
policy
for
at
all
work,
this.
so
Yeah, it's not
it's a lot.
This is
hire-
more than a
we
year
usually
long
hire
duration
Some, company
for
to do
all
our
of the
stuff.
policies.
And it's like a living, breathing document.
Because the other thing is,
necessary, but
there are program
it's-
requirements
I mean, there's so
in
many
every
things.
single
Probably
program
digitized up to
that
date.
may not,
Yeah.
that aren't just transferable across all programs. And so you have to write policy to that program
Exactly.
that meets the requirements.
When I went to the conference in Cleveland, that's what
Or-
everyone was talking
I'll
about.
talk to John. I can talk to John.
Yeah, well, it's probably a nationwide
And-
thing. but-
Yeah.
We'll discuss it on our next meeting.
Okay. Sounds good.
Charlene, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. I guess,
Ruben, do you have any comments?
Well, actually, I like, nice seeing Keely here,
Yeah,
seeing
I'll
everybody.
second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
They see y'all too.
okay, no, it's nice for you to be, you
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
person
Well,
to
I can
person.
make it a regular.
I have no comments. Thank you for all coming, and have a great evening.
1844.
Meeting adjourned. You bet. I'm sorry. Your pin in my pocket. That's a bad habit that I have.
You're not the only one. Thank you. You're not the only one that puts pins in pockets.